Imagine for a moment that you are not watching a video, but remembering something you forgot long ago. Not learning something new, but rediscovering something buried so deeply inside you that words almost fail to touch it. What if the question of whether God exists has never been about proof in the scientific sense, but about recognition, the way you recognize your own reflection without needing evidence, the way you know love exists without measuring it, the way you trust your own consciousness even though you've never seen it? Every civilization, every culture, every era has asked the same question in different languages. Yet the answer keeps surfacing in places we don't expect, hidden inside stories of the soul, whispered through moments of awe, suffering, beauty, and impossible coincidence. And what if those stories, when seen together, form a pattern too precise, too intentional, too meaningful to be accidental? There is a moment that has occurred to almost every human being at least once in their lifetime, usually late at night, when the world grows quiet and your thoughts become louder than the noise around you. A moment when you suddenly realize you exist, not just as a body, but as an observer inside the body. You don't think your thoughts into existence, they appear. You don't command your heart to beat, yet it does. You don't choose to feel awe when you stare at the stars, it happens to you. And in that moment, a strange question arises without being invited. Who is the one watching the thoughts? Who is the one aware of awareness itself? Neuroscience can describe electrical signals, psychology can analyze behavior, but neither can explain why there is something rather than nothing, or why matter is aware of itself at all. Consciousness remains the one phenomenon science can map around but never enter. And the moment you realize this, the universe stops feeling like a random accident and starts feeling like a stage set for awareness to wake up. Consider this carefully. If the universe had formed differently by even a fraction, stars would not exist, chemistry would fail, atoms would collapse or never bind, time would unravel, and life would be impossible. Physicists call this fine-tuning, but that phrase barely captures the improbability. The constants that govern reality are balanced on a razor's edge so precise that if you adjusted them by 1 part in trillions, nothing would be here to notice the difference. No galaxies, no light, no time, no observers asking questions on YouTube. The universe behaves not like chaos, but like a calibrated system. And the deeper science goes, the more mathematical, elegant, and intentional reality appears. This leads to an unsettling question. Why would blind chance produce a universe capable of questioning itself? Why would randomness generate meaning-seeking minds? And why would the laws of physics look as if they were written in a language the human mind can understand? Now imagine this not as data, but as a story unfolding over billions of years. Matter organizes itself, stars are born, planets form, chemistry awakens, life emerges, cells replicate, brains evolve, and suddenly consciousness appears. Not survival instincts alone, but art, morality, guilt, compassion, curiosity, wonder, the desire for eternity, and the haunting sense that death is not the end. Humans across continents who never met each other independently imagined a higher intelligence, a moral lawgiver, an eternal presence. This wasn't taught through global communication. It emerged spontaneously, from Native American tribes to ancient Mesopotamia, from African civilizations to Eastern mystics, from philosophers to children staring at the sky. The intuition of God surfaced again and again. And the strangest part is that disbelief itself came much later in human history. Belief wasn't invented. Doubt was. There are stories from hospital rooms where brain activity flatlined, yet patients later described conversations, locations, and details that occurred while they were clinically dead. Doctors documented cases where consciousness persisted when the brain should not have been functioning at all. Skeptics call this hallucination, but hallucinations don't produce verifiable external information. And yet some patients described instruments, dialogues, and actions they could not have physically perceived. If the brain produces consciousness, consciousness should vanish when the brain shuts down. But what if the brain is not the source, but the receiver? Like a radio that translates a signal, not the signal itself. When the radio breaks, the broadcast doesn't disappear. It continues elsewhere. Think about morality. Not preferences, not laws, but the internal sense that some things are objectively wrong even if everyone approves of them. Why does betrayal feel wrong even when it benefits us? Why does sacrificing oneself for strangers feel meaningful? Evolution can explain cooperation, but it cannot explain why we feel guilt even when no one is watching. Why we admire heroes who gain nothing. Why we mourn injustice even when it doesn't affect us personally. Moral law feels discovered, not invented. You don't decide that torturing children is wrong based on convenience. You know it. And laws imply a lawgiver, not a tyrant, but a moral source beyond human opinion. Then there are moments that defy probability so precisely they feel scripted. People meeting at the exact moment their lives are about to collapse. Strangers saying the exact sentence someone needed to hear. Doors closing only to lead to better paths. Events aligning in ways that seem meaningful only in hindsight, yet impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, but naming something doesn't explain it. It only acknowledges that reality sometimes behaves like a conversation rather than a machine. The human soul itself carries evidence. The universal fear of death paired with an equally universal hope that death is not final. The longing for eternity that no finite pleasure can satisfy. People reach success, wealth, fame, and still feel empty, as if something essential is missing. It's as if humans were designed for more than survival. Hunger implies food exists. Thirst implies water exists. Desire implies fulfillment exists. So what does the desire for eternity imply? Children often speak of God without being taught theology. They talk about an invisible presence, a watcher, a creator, an all-loving intelligence. Even when raised in secular environments, the idea emerges naturally. Psychologists note that belief in God requires less cognitive effort than disbelief. Atheism must be taught. Faith emerges intuitively. That alone should make us pause. And then there is Jesus, a figure so historically disruptive that time itself is measured around his life. Not just a teacher, not just a philosopher, but someone whose followers claimed he defeated death itself. His earliest followers did not gain power, wealth, or safety. They gained persecution, torture, and execution. People may die for beliefs they think are true, but no one dies for something they know is false. And these people claimed not philosophy, but eyewitness testimony. A resurrection that shattered their fear and transformed cowards into martyrs overnight. History offers no parallel for a movement that exploded under oppression instead of collapsing. The Bible itself contains layers of complexity that modern computers struggle to replicate. Predictive prophecies, numerical patterns, historical accuracy confirmed centuries later, and philosophical depth that speaks to both ancient shepherds and modern scientists. Written by dozens of authors across centuries, yet unified by one narrative of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. This coherence across time is itself improbable. The universe behaves as if it wants to be known. Mathematics fits reality too perfectly. Beauty exists beyond necessity. Music moves the soul though it serves no survival function. Love compels sacrifice. Art transcends biology. These are not evolutionary leftovers. They are signatures, fingerprints of intention, clues scattered across existence. And maybe the strongest evidence is this. Even when people deny God, they still argue for meaning, justice, love, and truth. But without God, these become illusions, chemical accidents pretending to matter. And yet no one lives as if love is meaningless or truth is irrelevant. Even atheists appeal to objective morality when they condemn injustice. Even skeptics search for purpose. Behavior reveals belief more than words ever could. So what if God is not hiding, but waiting to be recognized? What if the silence people complain about is not absence, but respect for free will? What if faith is not believing without evidence, but trusting what the evidence whispers rather than shouts? What if the reason God doesn't force belief is the same reason love cannot be coerced? The soul seems tuned to eternity, like a compass pointing north even when surrounded by distractions. And the moment you stop demanding proof on your terms and start observing reality honestly, something shifts. The universe stops looking empty and starts looking intentional. Life stops feeling random and starts feeling authored. Suffering stops being pointless and starts being transformative. And God stops being an idea and starts feeling like a presence. The question is no longer whether God exists. The question becomes whether we are willing to see what has been there all along. And when that realization settles in, quietly at first, almost imperceptibly, something deeper begins to happen. You notice that the question of God's existence was never meant to be answered the way we answer trivia or solve equations. It was meant to be encountered the way we encounter beauty, truth, or love, not by forcing it into a box, but by allowing it to reveal itself over time. The universe doesn't scream its secrets. It whispers them, patiently, consistently, across moments that feel ordinary until they suddenly don't. A sunrise that stops you mid-step. A piece of music that brings tears without permission. A stranger's kindness that restores your faith in humanity when you didn't even realize it was fading. These moments don't prove God the way a lab experiment proves a hypothesis, but they do something far more powerful. They awaken recognition. Think about how strange it is that humans ask why at all. Not just how things work, but why they exist. Why there is order instead of chaos. Why the universe is intelligible. Why meaning feels real even when life is hard. Why hope persists even in the darkest conditions. Prisoners write poetry. Parents sacrifice everything for children. People forgive what logic says should never be forgiven. None of this is required for survival, yet it defines what it means to be human. These are not instincts alone. They are echoes of something higher calling us beyond ourselves. Even suffering, which many believe disproves God, often becomes the very place where belief is born. People who have walked through unimaginable pain frequently emerge with a depth of compassion and clarity that comfort alone never produces. They speak of being held together when everything else fell apart, of strength arriving that was not their own, of peace appearing where panic should have lived. Pain does not erase God. For many, it reveals him, not as a distant observer, but as a presence within the struggle, shaping endurance, refining character, and drawing meaning out of what once felt meaningless. And notice how the human heart reacts to injustice. We don't just dislike it, we rage against it. We demand accountability. We cry out that things should not be this way. That word "should" is incredibly revealing. It assumes a moral standard beyond survival, beyond preference, beyond culture. It assumes a way reality is meant to be. But meant by whom? In a purely material universe, nothing is meant. Things simply are. And yet every human life is lived as if meaning is real, as if good matters, as if evil must be confronted, as if love is worth dying for. These assumptions don't come from atoms. They come from alignment with something transcendent. There is also the quiet mystery of prayer. People across cultures, beliefs, and backgrounds speak into the unseen and report being answered, not always with what they want, but often with what they need. Skeptics may call it coincidence, but when millions of independent lives report similar experiences across centuries, coincidence begins to look like pattern, especially when those answers bring transformation, humility, courage, forgiveness, and love rather than ego or control. Placebo effects don't produce lifelong character change. Self-deception doesn't create saints. And then there is the sense, difficult to articulate but impossible to ignore, that life itself feels like a story rather than a sequence of events. Stories have direction. They have tension, development, redemption, and purpose. Randomness doesn't create narrative. Meaning does. Humans don't just experience life, they interpret it. They look for lessons. They search for arcs. They speak of chapters, turning points, and destiny. It's as if we intuitively know we are part of something larger, something unfolding with intention. If God did not exist, belief in him should be a weakness that fades with education. But the opposite has happened. The more humanity learns about the universe, the stranger and more mysterious it becomes. The deeper we go into physics, the more reality dissolves into probability, observer effects, and immaterial foundations. The deeper we explore the mind, the less consciousness can be reduced to matter. Science keeps discovering limits to its own explanatory power. And at those limits, awe returns. Not ignorance, but humility. Perhaps that is the point. God is not discovered by conquering knowledge, but by recognizing its boundaries. By admitting that existence itself is a gift, not a given. That awareness is astonishing. That love is sacred, that morality matters, that truth is worth seeking even when it costs us. These realizations do not weaken the mind, they complete it. And so the evidence of God is not locked in one argument, one miracle, or one story. It is woven through everything, in the precision of the cosmos, in the depth of consciousness, in the hunger of the soul, in the universality of moral law, in the transformation of lives, in the longing for eternity, in the persistent sense that we are known, seen, and called. Maybe God's existence is not something to be proven from the outside, but something to be awakened from within, like light revealing what was already present, but unseen. And once you see it, you realize the question was never whether God exists. The real question has always been whether we are willing to listen to what existence itself has been trying to tell us all along. In the modern world, revelation no longer arrives wrapped in fire on mountaintops or carved into stone tablets. It arrives quietly, disguised as progress, disruption, and awakening, woven into technology, psychology, science, and global consciousness. The revelation of our time is not that God suddenly appeared again, but that humanity reached a point where it could no longer ignore what has always been there. The more connected we became, the more disconnected we felt. The more informed we became, the more confused we grew. The more we conquered the external world, the more we realized we had lost the internal one. And in that tension, something ancient began to resurface in a modern voice. Today, people are surrounded by screens, algorithms, and infinite information, yet loneliness has reached levels unseen in human history. Depression and anxiety rise despite comfort and convenience. This contradiction is not random. It is revelatory. It exposes a truth modern culture tried to silence. Humans are not sustained by data alone. The soul starves when meaning is removed. The modern revelation is this realization spreading across millions of minds simultaneously, that something essential is missing, and no amount of consumption, validation, or distraction can replace it. Science itself has become an unexpected messenger. Physics now tells us that reality is not solid, but probabilistic. That particles exist as possibilities until observed. That time is not fixed. That the universe began not gradually, but suddenly, from nothing, governed by laws that existed before matter itself. This is not the death of God, as once predicted. It is the collapse of material certainty. The universe now looks less like a machine and more like a thought, less like an accident and more like intention frozen into structure. When scientists speak honestly today, they admit something remarkable. The deeper we go, the less material reality looks fundamental. Modern psychology echoes the same revelation. The human mind is not satisfied by pleasure alone. Meaning heals where medication cannot. Purpose restores where stimulation fails. Forgiveness reduces trauma more effectively than revenge. Gratitude reshapes the brain. Love transforms identity. These discoveries align not with modern ideology, but with ancient spiritual truth. What once sounded like religion now emerges as measurable reality. The revelation is not new information. It is confirmation. Then there is the rise of spiritual hunger in unexpected places. In a world predicted to abandon faith, millions are instead returning to prayer, meditation, scripture, and silence, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion with emptiness. Not because they were forced, but because they searched everywhere else and found nothing that could carry the weight of the soul. This is not organized religion growing through power. It is quiet faith spreading through personal encounter. Technology, ironically, has accelerated this awakening. The internet has exposed people to every worldview at once, and instead of dissolving belief, it has clarified it. When all ideas are visible, truth stands out. When every promise is tested, only what endures remains. People can now see in real time what happens when societies remove moral foundations, redefine truth, and replace meaning with identity performance. The results are not freedom but fragmentation, and that fragmentation is itself a revelation, a warning written into lived experience. The modern revelation also appears in crisis. Global pandemics, economic instability, climate anxiety, and cultural division have stripped away the illusion of human control. The myth that humanity could save itself through intelligence alone has fractured. In moments where systems fail, people instinctively look upward and inward, not to governments, not to technology, but to something higher. Crisis reveals dependency. Dependency reveals humility. And humility is the doorway through which God has always entered. Another sign of this revelation is the renewed conversation about consciousness. Artificial intelligence can imitate intelligence, but it cannot create awareness. It can process language, but it does not experience meaning. It can simulate emotion, but it does not feel. This distinction has forced humanity to confront an uncomfortable truth. Intelligence is not the same as consciousness, and consciousness cannot be manufactured. It exists as something fundamentally different from code or chemistry. This revives the ancient question in modern language: what is the soul? Even morality is reasserting itself. Attempts to make ethics purely subjective have collapsed under their own weight. Societies cannot function without shared moral ground. Truth cannot survive without commitment to reality. Justice cannot exist without a standard beyond opinion. The modern revelation is that relativism does not liberate. It destabilizes. And people are beginning to feel this in their daily lives, not as theory, but as consequence. Perhaps the most profound modern revelation is this: God did not disappear in the age of reason. Humanity did. And now, slowly, painfully, and honestly, humanity is finding its way back. Not to superstition, but to reverence. Not to blind belief, but to awakened trust. Not to fear, but to meaning. The signs are not dramatic in appearance, but they are massive in scope. A collective fatigue with emptiness. A global hunger for truth. A recognition that love, beauty, sacrifice, and forgiveness are not evolutionary leftovers, but signals of something eternal. The modern revelation is not a new message from God. It is the realization that the original message never stopped speaking. And maybe that is why it feels so personal. Because revelation today is not written in the sky. It is written in the human heart, awakening one mind at a time, whispering the same truth humanity has always been moving toward, that we were never alone, never accidental, and never meant to live without God. When Jesus Christ spoke, he rarely gave abstract philosophy. He told stories that entered the listener quietly and then refused to leave. His teachings were not designed to impress the educated elite, but to awaken the conscience, confront the heart, and realign the soul. He spoke to fishermen, outcasts, skeptics, the broken, and the powerful alike, and what made his words unforgettable was not volume or force, but authority that felt unborrowed. He did not argue for truth. He spoke as if truth already knew him. At the center of his teaching was a radical idea that overturned human instincts: that the kingdom of God is not built through power, dominance, or revenge, but through humility, mercy, and love. He said that the blessed ones are not the rich, admired, or feared, but the poor in spirit, the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart, and those who hunger for righteousness. This was shocking then and remains unsettling now, because it reverses the world's value system. Jesus taught that greatness is not measured by how many serve you, but by how many you serve, and that those who exalt themselves will eventually be humbled, while those who humble themselves will be lifted. He spoke often about love, but not as emotion or attraction. He described love as action, sacrifice, and commitment, even toward enemies. He taught that loving those who love you is easy and ordinary, but loving those who wrong you reveals something divine at work within you. Forgiveness, in his teaching, was not weakness but freedom, releasing the soul from the poison of resentment. He warned that unforgiveness imprisons the one who holds it, while forgiveness opens the door to healing, even when justice is not immediately visible. Jesus spoke directly to the inner life, to thoughts and intentions rather than outward behavior alone. He said that anger held in the heart is the seed of violence, that lust entertained in the mind fractures the soul, and that words spoken carelessly reveal the true condition of a person's heart. He taught that external obedience without inner transformation is empty, comparing it to cleaning the outside of a cup while leaving the inside filthy. What mattered to him was not religious performance, but authenticity, integrity, and alignment between belief and action. One of his most repeated teachings was about trust. He urged people not to live consumed by anxiety over the future, food, money, or status, saying that life is more than what we possess. He pointed to birds that do not hoard and flowers that do not strive, using them as reminders that existence is sustained by a greater care than human effort alone. This was not a call to passivity, but an invitation to freedom from fear, to live anchored in trust rather than controlled by worry. Jesus consistently elevated the value of the individual. Children, the sick, the poor, sinners, and social outsiders were not interruptions to his mission. They were the focus of it. He taught that every human being bears worth beyond social labels, and that heaven rejoices more over one lost soul restored than over 99 who never strayed. In his stories, the outsider is welcomed, the broken are healed, and the proud are warned not because God delights in punishment, but because pride blinds while humility opens the door to grace. Perhaps his most challenging teaching was about self-denial. He said that anyone who wants to truly live must be willing to lose their life, meaning not physical death, but surrender of ego, control, and self-centered ambition. He taught that chasing the world at the cost of the soul is a tragic exchange, because no external gain can compensate for inner loss. True life, according to Jesus, is found not by clinging tightly, but by releasing trustfully. Underlying all his teachings was one consistent message: that God is not distant, cold, or indifferent, but personal, attentive, and loving. He described God as a father who knows needs before they are spoken, who welcomes the repentant, who runs toward the lost, and who offers grace not as a reward for perfection, but as a gift to those who turn toward him. This redefined how people related to God, not through fear-based religion, but through relationship grounded in truth and love. Jesus taught that truth is not merely information, but transformation. Knowing truth means living it. Hearing his words without applying them, he said, is like building a house on sand, impressive at first glance, but unable to withstand storms. Living his teachings is like building on solid ground, not immune to difficulty, but resilient when trials come. What makes Jesus' teaching endure across centuries is that it does not age with culture or collapse under scrutiny. It confronts every generation with the same penetrating questions. What do you truly value? What controls your heart? Where do you place your trust? How do you treat others when no one is watching? And who are you becoming? His teachings do not merely inform the mind. They expose motives, challenge assumptions, and invite transformation. And perhaps that is why, long after empires have fallen and philosophies have faded, the words of Jesus continue to shape lives, unsettle consciences, heal wounds, and draw seekers not just toward better behavior, but toward deeper truth. As his teaching unfolded over time, it became clear that he was not merely offering guidance for better living, but revealing a way of being that cut to the core of human identity. He spoke of truth as something that sets people free, not because it is comfortable, but because it is real. He warned that self-deception is the most dangerous form of blindness, because it convinces a person they see clearly while they are still lost. This is why he challenged hypocrisy so directly, not to shame but to awaken. To him, honesty before God mattered more than reputation before people. He taught that faith is not intellectual certainty but relational trust. Like a child relying on a parent, faith meant leaning into God even when outcomes were unclear. This is why he said faith the size of a mustard seed could move mountains. Not because of the size of belief, but because of the power of the one being trusted. Faith in his teaching was not about controlling God, but about surrendering control. His parables often revealed uncomfortable truths. In them, religious insiders were frequently exposed, while unexpected outsiders were shown mercy. A good Samaritan helps when the religious pass by. A repentant tax collector is justified while the proud religious leader is not. These stories dismantled the idea that closeness to God is earned through status, knowledge, or rule-keeping. Instead, closeness came through humility, repentance, and love expressed in action. One of his most striking teachings was about the heart as the center of human life. He said that what comes out of a person matters more than what goes in, because words and actions flow from the inner condition. Anger, envy, pride, and bitterness, when left unchecked, shape character and destiny. Conversely, compassion, mercy, and truth cultivate life. He taught that transformation does not begin by fixing circumstances, but by renewing the heart. He also prepared his followers for suffering, not as punishment, but as part of faithful living in a broken world. He never promised ease, but he promised presence. He spoke of peace that exists even in trouble, a peace not dependent on circumstances. This peace, he said, comes from alignment with God's will rather than escape from hardship. It was a peace that could not be taken, only abandoned. Perhaps the most radical teaching came not through words, but through actions. He washed the feet of his followers, performing the work of the lowest servant. In doing so, he redefined leadership forever. Authority in his kingdom flows downward, not upward. Power is expressed through service. Leadership is proven through sacrifice. This single act quietly dismantled centuries of human hierarchy and exposed the ego-driven systems people still cling to today. His teaching reached its climax at the cross, where everything he spoke was lived out in full view. He did not answer violence with violence. He did not defend himself through force. He forgave while suffering and entrusted himself to God when everything appeared lost. To the watching world, this looked like defeat. But his teaching had always pointed toward this paradox: that life comes through surrender, victory through sacrifice, and strength through love. The resurrection, claimed by his followers, reframed everything he taught. If death was not final, then love truly wins. If the grave could not hold him, then his words were not philosophy, but truth with eternal weight. The resurrection transformed fear into courage and despair into hope, not through argument, but through encounter. It was not an idea that spread first, but a conviction born from experience. At its core, his teaching was an invitation to step out of fear and into trust, to move from self-centered living into God-centered life, to exchange emptiness for meaning, to choose love in a world addicted to power, to see others not as obstacles or tools, but as neighbors bearing divine worth. What continues to draw people to his teaching is not that it flatters human nature, but that it explains it. It makes sense of longing, guilt, hope, failure, and redemption. It names what people feel but cannot articulate. It offers a path not just to behave better, but to become new. And perhaps this is why his words still echo across centuries, cultures, and technologies. Because they speak to something unchanging within the human soul. A hunger for truth, a desire for forgiveness, a longing for purpose, and a quiet awareness that we were made for more than survival. His teaching does not end with agreement. It demands response. To hear it is to be confronted with a choice: to continue building life on shifting ground, or to trust the foundation he offered. And in that choice, the teaching of Jesus moves from ancient words on a page into a living reality, shaping not just what people believe, but who they become. And as these words settle into your heart, there is a gentle realization that this story was never meant to remain distant or theoretical. Everything shared here, every teaching, every insight, every quiet truth, points towards something deeply personal. Not a religion to perform, not rules to memorize, but an invitation to live awake, to live anchored, to live with meaning that does not collapse when life becomes uncertain. The teachings of Jesus endure because they meet people where they truly are, not where they pretend to be, offering rest to the weary mind, hope to the burdened heart, and direction to the searching soul. What makes this message timeless is its simplicity wrapped in depth. Love that heals instead of divides. Truth that frees instead of condemns. Faith that strengthens instead of blinds. A life that is not wasted chasing what fades, but invested in what lasts. When people live this way, they don't just change themselves, they quietly change the world around them. Homes become gentler. Relationships become deeper. Purpose becomes clearer. And even pain begins to carry meaning. If this message stirred something inside you, that is not an accident. It means your soul recognized truth before your mind could explain it. That quiet feeling, that sense of peace, curiosity, or longing you feel right now, is the same feeling that has guided seekers for generations. It is the reminder that you are not alone, not forgotten, and not without purpose. You were created to live with depth, love, and direction, and discovering that journey is one step at a time. If this video brought you value, clarity, or comfort, take a moment to support this growing community. Gently press the like button so this message can reach others who may need it at the right moment in their lives. Share this video with someone you care about, because you never know whose heart might be searching for exactly these words. And subscribe to this channel to continue exploring stories, teachings, and truths that nourish the soul, expand understanding, and bring light into everyday life. This channel exists not just to inform, but to walk with you, to help you grow, reflect, and rediscover meaning in a noisy world. Every video is created with intention, depth, and care for those who are searching for something real. Thank you for being here, for listening with an open heart, and for allowing this space to be part of your journey. Until next time, remember this gentle truth. You are deeply loved, your life has purpose, and no sincere search for truth is ever wasted. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep your heart open. And as this moment comes to a close, take a slow breath and allow yourself to simply be present. Let the noise quiet down. Let the weight lift, even if just a little. Life does not change all at once, but hearts do, gently, silently, in moments like these. Growth often begins not with answers, but with awareness. Not with certainty, but with willingness. And the fact that you stayed here, listening until the end, already says something beautiful about you. Remember, faith is not a destination you arrive at overnight. It is a journey you walk step by step. Some days with confidence, some days with questions, and some days simply holding on. And all of that is okay. What matters is that you keep your heart soft, your mind open, and your spirit willing to learn. Every sincere question, every honest doubt, every quiet prayer counts. Nothing is wasted. May you carry this message into your day with gentleness. May you treat yourself with grace when you fall short, and treat others with kindness even when it's difficult. May you remember that growth is not about perfection, but direction. And may you never forget that even in silence, even in waiting, even in uncertainty, you are being guided. If this space feels like home to you, stay connected. More stories, reflections, and soul-nourishing messages are coming, created with intention for those who seek depth in a shallow world. Your presence here matters more than numbers ever could, and together we can build a community rooted in truth, compassion, and meaning. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your heart. Until we meet again, keep walking forward with hope, choose love whenever you can, and trust that your journey has purpose far greater than you may see right now.